The Morrissey family case. A child's courage in the face of evil. In the quiet darkness of a suburban night, a 5-year-old boy lies motionless under the covers, his heart pounding as screams echo through his home. The date is April 5, 2010, and in a middle-class neighborhood just outside Fort Lauderdale, Florida, the Morrissey family's world is about to shatter. A 911 call crackles to life. Plantation Police Department. How can I help you? The operator's voice is calm, unaware that the call will unravel one of the most horrific home invasions in Florida's history. What secrets did young Patrick Morrissey witness that night? And how could a child so young hold the key to catching a killer who thought he'd gotten away with murder? This is a story for true crime enthusiasts who crave gripping tales of survival and justice, where a single moment of courage can change everything. Miss this, and you'll miss a tale that proves even the smallest voice can bring down the darkest evil. Background and setup. The Morrissey family lived a life that seemed idyllic, nestled in a comfortable home at 601 Northwest 75th Terrace in Plantation, Florida. Joe Morrissey, a respected college professor, and his wife, Kay, a devoted mother, had built a warm, loving environment for their adopted 5-year-old son, Patrick. Their home was a sanctuary of middle-class stability, filled with the laughter of a young boy and the quiet routines of family life. Joe, known for his hands-on parenting, often spent weekends teaching Patrick how to do somersaults or playing games in their backyard. Kay, a creative soul, spent hours in her craft room, stitching together memories for her family. Their daughter, Christina, lived just 10 minutes away, a frequent visitor to the close-knit household. But beneath this serene surface, trouble was brewing. Across town, Randy Tunditter Sr., a 43-year-old father of 2, ran a window tinting business called Gator Tint. To outsiders, he appeared frail, often seen with an oxygen mask and a limp, a man battling health issues. But those who knew him better whispered of a darker side, a man once nicknamed Rampage and Scarface for his volatile temper and a prominent facial scar. Randy Sr. had a history of manipulation, particularly over his eldest son, Randy Tunditter Jr., a young man struggling with addiction and desperate to earn his father's approval. The Tunditter family's dysfunction was a ticking time bomb, one that would soon detonate in the Morrisseys' lives. The connection between the two families was tenuous but significant. Joe Morrissey had been Randy Sr.'s landlord, renting him a townhouse. When Randy Sr. claimed he'd slipped on the stairs and threatened to sue, tensions flared. To Randy Sr., this wasn't just a business dispute, it was personal. He saw Joe as an obstacle, someone standing in the way of his pride and financial gain. What began as a petty grievance would spiral into a meticulously planned act of violence that would tear apart both families. The crime. On the night of April 5, 2010, the Morrissey household was quiet. Joe had dozed off in front of the television, the soft glow casting shadows across the living room. Kay was in her craft room, surrounded by fabric swatches and sewing supplies, lost in her work. Upstairs, 5-year-old Patrick slept soundly in his parents' bed, his small frame curled under the blankets. The clock neared 11:30 p.m. when the silence was shattered by a noise, a thud, like something heavy falling. Kay looked up, her heart catching in her throat. She stepped out of her craft room and froze. A man stood in her home, his face obscured, a gun gleaming in his hand. His voice was low, commanding, as he barked orders through a two-way radio. "Just listen to me, don't talk." Kay's scream pierced the air as she was forced to the floor, her wrists and ankles bound with zip ties. Joe, startled awake, tried to intervene, but he too was overpowered, his hands and feet secured. The intruder's movements were deliberate, his intent clear. This was no random burglary. Upstairs, Patrick stirred. The screams of his parents pulled him from sleep, his small body tensing under the covers. He didn't dare move, remembering his father's gentle lessons about staying calm in scary moments. "Do a somersault, buddy," Joe would say during playful times, "and I'll catch you." Now, Patrick could only listen, his eyes squeezed shut, pretending to sleep as the nightmare unfolded below. The intruder, later revealed as Randy Tunditter Jr., manipulated by his father, demanded money. He forced Joe and Kay to their knees in the master bedroom, their faces covered with towels to disorient them. Patrick, still in the bed, peeked through the slits of his closed eyes, his heart racing as he saw the gun pressed against his parents' heads. Joe's voice, steady despite the terror, reached his son. "Stay still, Patrick. Pretend you're asleep." Those words, calm and protective, would be the last Patrick ever heard from his father. Randy Jr. dragged Joe into the family room, leaving Kay bound and trembling. Patrick heard his father's pleas, begging for his family's safety, then a chilling silence. The intruder returned, and Kay, still tied, heard him rifling through the house, searching for valuables. He spoke into his radio, his voice cold. "Where's the wallet? I want the wallet." Then, a new sound, a faint crackling, growing louder. The smell of smoke began to fill the air. The intruder had set the kitchen ablaze, intending to erase his crime in flames. Kay, fighting through her panic, realized Patrick was her only hope. "Patrick, baby, wake up," she whispered urgently, her voice muffled by the towel. The 5-year-old sprang into action, his fear giving way to courage. He scrambled through the smoke-filled house to his mother's craft room, grabbing a pair of scissors. With trembling hands, he cut the zip ties binding Kay's wrists and ankles. Together, they stumbled out of the house, the fire roaring behind them, and collapsed on the street as sirens wailed in the distance. Investigation. The Plantation Police Department arrived at 601 Northwest 75th Terrace to a scene of chaos. Flames licking the walls of the Morrissey home, Kay covered in blood and soot, and Patrick clinging to her side. Christina, Kay's daughter, arrived minutes later, pushing past officers to reach her mother. "He's gone," Kay sobbed, her words barely coherent. "Joe's gone. They killed him." Christina, clutching her mother, couldn't fathom the horror her family had endured. Inside the house, investigators found Joe Morrissey's body, his life taken in a brutal act of violence. The fire, though contained, had destroyed parts of the crime scene, but evidence remained. Zip ties, a hunting knife sheath, and signs of forced entry. Kay's account was fragmented, her shock rendering her memories hazy. She described a single intruder, armed and methodical, communicating via two-way radio. But it was Patrick, the 5-year-old witness, who held the key to the truth. In a quiet room at the police station, a detective sat across from Patrick, his small frame dwarfed by the chair. "Do you know what a lie is?" the detective asked gently. Patrick's voice was steady. "It's when you don't tell the truth, and you do something bad." He recounted the night with chilling clarity. How he saw the man tie up his parents, how he heard his father's pleas, and how he saved his mother with the scissors. "I was so scared," he admitted, his eyes wide. "But my mom said I'm a hero." Kay's interrogation, however, raised doubts. Her story seemed inconsistent, her trauma clouding her recollection. Detectives wondered if she was hiding something, or if she was simply too broken to piece it together. With no clear suspect, they turned to a lead from Joe's past, his dispute with Randy Tundeter Sr. over the townhouse. Detective Kendall visited Randy Sr.'s home, finding a frail man who seemed incapable of such a violent crime. "He's a professional tenant," Randy Sr. claimed, deflecting blame onto Joe. But something about his demeanor, too calm, too calculated, set Kendall on edge. The investigation shifted when police learned of Randy Tundeter Jr., who had an outstanding warrant for a parole violation. Brought in for questioning, Randy Jr. was composed, almost eager to talk. "I don't have no connection with this murder," he insisted, his eyes darting to the recorder. He spoke warmly of his father, calling him a stand-up guy who would never do nothing like this, but Kendall wasn't convinced. The pieces didn't add up, until a bombshell dropped. Sean Tundeter, Randy Sr.'s younger son, walked into the police station with a story that changed everything. "My dad did it," he said, his voice trembling with conviction. Sean recounted a morning when his brother, Randy Jr., turned on the news to a headline about the plantation murder. Randy Jr. had paced nervously, smoking a cigarette on the porch. When Sean confronted him, "Tell me you had nothing to do with this," Randy Jr. deflected. "Go talk to Dad." Upstairs, Sean faced his father, who snapped, "You need to shut up, or I'll kill you if I had to." The threat chilled Sean, but he knew he had to act. Determined to expose his father, Sean offered to wear a wire. Detectives equipped him with a recording device hidden in a car key, and that night, he confronted Randy Sr. at home. For 2 tense hours, Sean probed, feigning concern for his father and brother. "What happened, Pa?" he asked, his hand steady on the device. The audio was garbled, filled with background noise, and for a moment, police feared it was unusable. But as they cleaned the recording, Randy Sr.'s voice emerged, cold and incriminating. He admitted to orchestrating the crime, manipulating his drug-addicted son, Randy Jr., with promises of crack and cash. "He's my son," Randy Sr. had said earlier, feigning loyalty. Now, his words betrayed him. A search of Gator Tint, Randy Sr.'s business, sealed the case. Detectives found zip ties matching those used on Kay and Joe, an empty hunting knife box, two-way radios, and foreign currency stolen from the Morrissey home. Burn marks in the parking lot suggested someone had tried to destroy evidence. With the audio and physical evidence in hand, police arrested Randy Tundeter Sr. and Randy Jr., charging them with a litany of crimes, from arson to first-degree murder. Outcome and aftermath: the trial of Randy Tundeter Sr. and Randy Jr. gripped Plantation, a community unaccustomed to such violence. In the courtroom, Kay sat resolute, determined to seek justice for Joe and Patrick. Though too young to testify, Patrick's interrogation footage was shown to the jury, his small voice recounting the terror with heartbreaking precision. "He put a gun on my mom and dad's head," he said, his words silencing the room. The jury saw a boy who, at 5 years old, had not only survived but saved his mother's life. Randy Jr. took the stand, his testimony a stunning betrayal of his father. "He said it was me and my brother who did this," he told the court, his voice heavy with disgust. "A father's job is to protect his kids, not hurt them." He confessed to his role, admitting he'd been lured by his father's promise of drugs and money. The jury learned how Randy Sr. had exploited his son's addiction, sending him into the Morrissey home to rob and kill while he orchestrated from the shadows. The evidence was overwhelming: the zip ties, the radios, the stolen currency, and Sean's recorded confession. The jury deliberated briefly before delivering a unanimous verdict. Randy Tundeter Jr. was sentenced to 40 years for his role in Joe's death. Randy Tundeter Sr., the mastermind, faced a harsher fate, convicted on 10 felony charges, including arson, armed robbery, kidnapping, attempted murder, and first-degree murder. The judge sentenced him to death. As the bailiff snapped handcuffs on Randy Sr., the metallic click echoed in Kay's ears, a sound she would never forget. The community reeled from the trial's revelations. Plantation, a quiet suburb, grappled with the reality that such evil could lurk in their midst. Media outlets covered the story extensively, hailing Patrick as a hero and Sean as a courageous whistleblower. Sean, however, paid a heavy price, losing his father and brother to prison, his family fractured by his choice to do right. "If you think I'm a snitch," he said defiantly, "you're just as bad as the guy who committed that murder." For Kay and Patrick, the trial offered closure but not healing. Kay insisted on a closed casket funeral for Joe, shielding Patrick from the brutality of his father's death. The 5-year-old struggled with PTSD, often looking to the sky, believing his dad was on an airplane, coming home. Kay's heart broke anew each time he asked for Joe, but she vowed to honor her husband's memory by living for their son. Closing reflection: the Morrissey family case is a stark reminder that courage can come from the smallest among us. Patrick Morrissey, a boy of 5, faced unimaginable terror and emerged a hero, saving his mother and helping bring a killer to justice. Sean Tundeter, too, showed bravery, risking everything to expose his father's crimes. Their stories weave a tapestry of resilience against a backdrop of betrayal and loss. Joe Morrissey's final act, protecting his family with his last words, lives on in Patrick and Kay, who continue to rebuild their lives. This tragedy teaches us that even in the darkest moments, a single act of courage can light the way to justice, proving that no community, no matter how safe, is immune to the shadows that lurk within.